if you're using a Whirley Pop to roast your coffee, there's a few things that you might want to incorporate into your technique to improve the roast. What I've done is to use this iron pan because it spreads the heat more evenly. So you can get an old iron skillet, go to a local used store and like a Goodwill or something like that, and pick one up, one of those. You can buy a brand one if you want, new one if you want, but you can get them cheaper elsewhere. Put that on there. That spreads the heat evenly because the aluminum walls on these Whirley Pops are very thin and they don't distribute the heat evenly. So that's one thing that you can do. The second thing you can do is to put these paddles on the wires. Those wires by themselves don't move the beans hardly at all. They do jostle them around, it does help, but putting a paddle on there is going to increase the effectiveness 2,000%. And that's not an exaggeration. I've got two different types I'm working with here. I've got one that follows the wire pretty well close to the end, and the other one is only connected halfway out to the wire. That's because the wire's bent. Makes it difficult to just hook it all the way to the end, but I may even try putting on more than one piece of aluminum on there in different parts of the wire to make it complete all the way. That will help to stir up the beans quite a bit. So you do that. There's one more thing that you can do. And if you have good paddles, this may or may not help you, but what I do is I will tilt the pan up and I have a 3/4 inch piece of copper tubing that I'll put underneath there, just right there, and tilt it. So then when the beans are going around, the tilt causes them to slide along the paddles. And it's just another way of distributing the beans around as you're roasting your beans. And this is what it looks like when you put the tubing under the pan to tilt it. You can use anything that is going to be able to withstand the high temperatures. This just works because it does span across the wire, and of course copper is very resistant to heat. It is interesting though, with iron pan sitting on the copper, that it gets this black crusty stuff on it. I don't know if that's a copper oxide. It could be a copper oxide. There is a form that is black. The more common is the green that you see on copper. So I imagine that's probably what it is. Here's a look at what it looks like when you have those fins on there. You can see those beans are being actively moved and stirred up. And the action between the paddles and the tilt in the pan helps to get a very even and tasty roast. And as a final tip, when you're roasting your beans, you put them in there. Right now I'm trying to heat it up. I'm going to heat this up to 300 degrees. And then I'll put my green beans in. And when I do that, I'll turn the flame down really, really low. Because in the first stage of your roasting process, you're essentially, the only thing you're doing is you're driving the water out of the beans. When you start with a pound of beans, you're going to end up with 13 ounces because you've driven off 3 ounces of water. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to boil your beans with the water in there, and that's what causes them to taste grassy or green or whatever you want to call it. So if you want a really good roast, turn the fire down low and let them dry out. And essentially, they will be dry when the temperature gets up to about 275 on here. So I take the temperature up to 300, I put in the beans, I turn down the fire, the temperature will drop because all that water evaporating off of those beans will cause the temperature to drop. But once the water is gone, the temperature will start to go back up again. And so I wait till it gets to 275, and then I'll turn the heat back up to my usual roasting. And you will notice remarkable difference in the flavor of your roast. So those are my tips for Whirley Pop roasting. Thanks for listening.